What is a person allowed to talk about in a synagogue? To understand this, we have to look at what the Torah tells us about Beit HaMikdash. One of the mitzvahs in the Torah is the mitzvah et migdashai tiro. A person has to fear the temple, the sanctuary. We learn from here that there's a whole list of things that a person is allowed to do and not allowed to do when he goes into the temple. All of these things are out of awe for the Shechina, which is resting and residing in this holy place. Now we have a pasuk in the prophets that says, Ve'eya lo lamigdash ma'at. It's talking about the Beit HaKnesset. And it says that the Beit HaKnesset is like a mini form of the Beit HaMikdash. And we learn from these two psukim that just like a person has to act in a certain way, a special way, an awe-filled way in the Beit HaMikdash, so too a person has to act when he is in the small Mikdash, the small sanctuary, which is the Beit HaKnesset. And the Chafetz Chaim rules that the mitzvah of fearing the sanctuary, acting with awe in the sanctuary, in the Beit HaMikdash, actually applies from the Torah in the Beit HaKnesset, in the synagogue. And this actually shows up in the Shulchan Aruch. In Shulchan Aruch, it says the following. It says that it is prohibited in a Beit HaKnesset to act with lightheadedness, joking, and something called sicha b'teila, which means idle talk. So we see that idle talk is prohibited in the synagogue, according to the Shulchan Aruch, and according to the Chafetz Chaim, this is actually a prohibition from the Torah. What's included in idle talk? So the Mishnah Berurah explains that idle talk in this particular case means even conversation which has got to do with something important. Let's say a person wants to discuss his business affairs, which is a significant and important topic. According to the Mishnah Berurah, this is actually prohibited. Some commentators point out that people we see that many people will have conversations in the synagogue about things other than Torah and Tefillah. And he says they rely on the following opinion. There's an opinion of the Ramban and others that say that when a person makes a Beit HaKnesset, he can make a condition that the Beit HaKnesset can be used for things apart from Tefillah. It can also be used for things which are necessary and important as well. So in other words, when they're actually building the Beit HaKnesset, they can actually make a condition that the Beit HaKnesset is going to be used not just for Tefillah, but it's also going to be used for other essential or important topics. And discussing something which is important to a person, let's say his business affairs, that's an important topic, that's also called an important need, and therefore they rely on that to speak about such things in the Beit HaKnesset. If the founders of the synagogue did not actually make this condition when they built the synagogue or bought the synagogue, so Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says that since the general custom is for people to talk about essential things when they are in the synagogue, it is as if they made the condition even if they didn't actually make it. So this is what people rely on, that they rely on the opinion that one is allowed to talk about important or significant matters in the synagogue because it's as if they made a condition when they founded the synagogue that the synagogue can also be used for essential or important purposes. However, it comes out from this that that's talking about a conversation which is at least a significant conversation which is important to a person's daily needs. But an idle conversation, which has got nothing to do with anything, and certainly if it's flippant and lightheaded, it comes out that we have no heter, and we have no way of permitting this at all. This is prohibited by the Shulchan Aruch. It might even be a Torah prohibition. This is something which will come as a surprise to a lot of people, but it comes out from this that one has to be very careful about what one talks about when they're in the Beit HaKnesset. Greeting someone in the synagogue, like saying hello, shalom, since that's something very short and very brief, that is allowed. The Mishnah Berurah continues. He says that in the Zohar, in the Kabbalistic tradition, it speaks very, very strongly about speaking about secular topics in the Beit HaKnesset. He says the Arizal was particular not to speak about anything in the Beit HaKnesset apart from Tefillah itself. Says the Mishnah Berurah, so much more so a person has to be careful not to speak prohibited speech like Lashon Hara, Rechilut, or disputations, arguments, these are certainly prohibited in the synagogue because the Shekhinah is in the synagogue, and when one speaks prohibited things in the synagogue, it's even worse than speaking outside because a person has disregarded the holy presence which resides in the synagogue. Now that's all as far as the shul is concerned itself. As far as the actual tefillah is concerned, the Shulchan Aruch rules from the time a person begins tefillah with Baruch She'amar until after Shemona Esrei, it is prohibited to speak. This is with outside the Bet HaKnesset or inside the Bet HaKnesset. Once the Chazan begins the repetition of the Shemona Esrei, it's prohibited to talk. And during the Torah reading, it's also prohibited to talk. We see many people are not particularly careful about these particular prohibitions. For example, we spoke about during the Torah reading, many people talk during the Torah reading. This is a very serious infraction. Some say one's not allowed to even talk about Torah matters. Others say one can talk about Torah matters to himself, only to himself, between the aliyot. So this is a mitzvah that people are not aware enough, they're not sufficiently aware of. However, this is something which is mentioned explicitly in Shulchan Aruch, and many of our authorities tell us that sometimes terrible things happen to us as a result of not being careful about how we speak in the synagogue. It's something that we all have to strengthen ourselves in.